Isaac Newton, Faith as Foundation for Scientific Inquiry. The theological foundations that supported monastic scholarship would find perhaps their most profound expression in the scientific revolution. While we typically envision Isaac Newton as the archetypal scientist, a rational mind meticulously observing falling apples and formulating mathematical laws, a closer examination of his life reveals something far more nuanced. What if the mind behind the laws of physics was also a devout seeker of divine truth? Newton's revolutionary principles of motion and universal gravitation fundamentally transformed our understanding of the physical universe, emerging from a foundation of theological conviction. Newton's scientific achievements stand as monumental contributions to human knowledge. His laws of motion and gravitational theory unified terrestrial and celestial mechanics. His work in optics demonstrated that white light contains the full spectrum of colors, and his mathematical innovations, particularly calculus, provided powerful tools for describing natural phenomena. These contributions form the bedrock of classical physics. Yet behind these scientific breakthroughs stood a man whose intellectual energies were primarily directed toward theological inquiry. Historical scholarship reveals a startling truth that contradicts popular conceptions of Newton. He wrote significantly more on theology and biblical interpretation than on scientific subjects. His theological manuscripts, many unpublished during his lifetime, fill thousands of pages with meticulous analyses of scripture, church history, and prophetic interpretation. This apparent paradox resolves when we understand Newton's fundamental worldview, one in which scientific and theological disciplines functioned as complementary branches of the same tree, both rooted in the pursuit of divine truth. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made, Newton wrote, drawing from the Gospel of John. This biblical foundation shaped his approach to scientific investigation as a form of reverential inquiry. In his personal correspondence and unpublished writings, he expressed the belief that studying natural phenomena constituted a sacred endeavor, a means of comprehending the Creator's design. For Newton, deciphering the mathematical principles governing planetary motion or understanding the properties of light represented forms of divine worship. This theological foundation shaped Newton's scientific methodology. His confidence in discovering coherent natural laws stemmed from his conviction that the universe was established by a rational God who designed creation to function according to comprehensible principles. As Newton investigated gravitational attraction or optical phenomena, he operated with the fundamental assumption that orderly patterns awaited discovery precisely because an orderly mind had implemented them in nature. Even in his landmark work, the Principia Mathematica, Newton concludes with theological reflections on God's relationship to space and time. For Newton, scientific laws described how God typically operates in nature, while miracles represented extraordinary divine interventions outside these regular patterns. Newton's integration of faith and reason was representative of a broader intellectual movement during the scientific revolution. Contemporary figures like Robert Boyle, Johannes Kepler, and René Descartes similarly pursued scientific inquiry within theological frameworks. These pioneers viewed the natural world as God's second book, a divine revelation complementary to Scripture. Careful observation of nature could reveal aspects of divine wisdom, power, and design that complemented biblical teachings. This historical perspective challenges modern assumptions about an inherent conflict between religious faith and scientific inquiry. The pioneers of modern science understood scientific investigation as revealing the mechanisms through which divine intelligence operated in creation. The very concept of discovering laws of nature presupposed a lawgiver whose rational mind established consistent patterns throughout the universe. The artificial separation between science and faith emerged primarily during the Enlightenment and intensified in the 19th century. As scientific institutions became increasingly secularized and professionalized, the theological motivations that had inspired early scientific pioneers were gradually obscured. This historical revisionism often portrayed science as having advanced despite religious interference rather than recognizing how theological commitments provided the philosophical foundation for scientific methodology. The case of Newton reveals the limitations of such simplistic narratives. His scientific achievements cannot be fully understood without recognizing how his theological worldview provided both motivation and methodological foundations for his research. Newton approached nature with reverence and systematic rigor precisely because he believed the universe exhibited divine rationality. The mathematical principles he discovered were expressions of God's consistent governance of creation. This historical insight offers a more nuanced understanding of the relationship between faith and reason. Rather than representing opposing approaches, they functioned as complementary domains in Newton's intellectual framework, branches of the same tree, with deep roots in theological conviction and a vast canopy of scientific discovery, both seeking understanding of the divine order.